Good day guys, Austin here, and in this one today, we're going to be taking a close look at the Cemu version 1.7.0. This is the Wii U emulator, and by God, is it emulating kind of pretty damn good right now. So let's go in depth as to what's been added to this emulator and how it's performing, in particular with Super Mario 3D World. Awesome. Okay then, so let's take a look at Super Mario 3D World and how this new incarnation of the Cemu emulator has impacted how this game plays on our PCs. First off then, I'm going to be taking full advantage of some of the new features which have been introduced in this build. First off, we've got the game packs. Now what these are, kind of pre-configured configurations for playing this game. And this one will be fully utilizing the 4K internal resolution. That means that natively, this will be running everything 4K. It doesn't make any difference what size your screen is. Internally, it's 4K, which gives that crisper, clearer detail. And we can see this now. This is the Cemu version. Then when we switch to the actual console, as you can see, the lines get a little bit more hazy. That crispness isn't there anymore. I wouldn't say it's noticeable when you're actually in-game and when you're playing on a normal TV, especially the YouTube algorithm and the way this is being presented to you now. It's not technical at all. But what it is showing you is kind of the light and day difference between when you put a one-to-one comparison, how crisp, how clear the emulator is bringing this to you. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And when you even blow this upscaled onto a 4K resolution, running 4K internal resolution, that's when you really start to see the difference. So yes, of course, it's still the exact same game, but this heightens it to another level. And when you really start to play this on the big screen, you really do start to notice it. So this is what I think is probably the biggest game for modern console emulation. Of course, you know, emulation for me is reliving the days of games gone by. So we never let go of those games which we found close to our heart just because we haven't got that console plugged in anymore. I want to be able to play every game from every place on whatever system I want. At the end of the day, it's just another form of media, just like movies, just like music. I wouldn't want to buy a DVD from, I don't know, Sony of my favorite film and then never be able to play it on any of DVD player or whatever it is, just because I didn't have that make or that model anymore. That's just stupid. That's just living in the dark ages. So me, now, of course, I like to play it on everything. So me wanting to play this now, of course, it's still a current gen console. But when you put into the fact that Nintendo have in fact started to end production, in fact they have ended production, and also they have started to pull the actual Wii U's from many of the suppliers' shelves. Therefore, yes, it's current gen, but no, you can no longer buy this system. There's all kinds of theories and stuff like this that we can go down, and that's not what this video is about, so we're going pretty much off topic here. But yes, when I emulate, it's not to do piracy, it's not to play new games or anything like that. It's so I can enjoy games. First off, games that I can no longer play because I don't have that system set up, or I don't want to have a 2000 system set up with said controllers and game catalog all at my disposal within arm's reach. I would rather just press the button and play the game. And then of course I've got the fact that in some cases, such as this, I can actually heighten the experience of the emulation, especially when it comes to the more current gen or the more recent consoles. It's like when we look at Dolphin and the Wii, of course I can play those games just as they were, but not only can I do that, I can upscale everything there to 4K. I can add added extra texture packs to that to heighten the actual game and to bring it into modern gaming. It's mind-boggling. And again, we're going completely off topic here. We're here to look at Super Mario 3D World, so let's have a look at some of the other features which this has brought into us. Right, so as we talked about some of the features which has been added into this emulator, first off was the added graphic packs. Now this isn't just enabled on this game, it's actually enabled on a few, as you can see in this list here. Now of course we'll be going in depth with each game and we'll probably do a full, shading over as how this emulator is affecting all games in particular and what it's actually brought to the table. But as you can see, it's brought a hell of a lot in this build, especially with this game. Now the added texture packs do different various things depending on what game you're playing. Most of them are also to do with resolution, but they can add a few extra features depending on what game you're playing. I'm sure as people add to this, more texture packs will be available, and probably in future iterations of this emulator, this will blow the doors wide open for adding new extra features, especially graphically, to this emulator and its playable games. Awesome, absolutely awesome. Something else which has happened is they have transformed the transferable shader cache, kind of a tongue twister. But what this means is it's always been available. You could always share your cache between whatever builds were going. However, the process was a bit dogged and kind of incompatible depending on how you're going about it. This has now been streamlined. It's now an entirely new process which is done quite well, and to be honest, it opens a lot of doors for the community to take advantage of this. So let's take it down to its bare bones. Basically, the shader cache, it had an issue, this emulator, when you first started to play the game, especially when you were playing a game for the first time. It would be very stuttery. Now, this would have different knock-on effects depending on what game you're playing. In terms of Super Mario 3D World, as you can see here, the actual game was fine once you've played it for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. The actual rest of the game would be pretty much untroubled for the entire game. But different games have different shader effects and all that kind of stuff going on. This means that obviously they were impacted a lot more. You get a lot more stutters, and it becomes very troublesome and annoying as you're actually playing through the games, taking away the enjoyment of playing the game in the first place. So what they made it is, you load it up, it loads from the texture cache, whatever you've got available, and then it just plays the game with whatever assets it's got to its these. What they've done is they've made it so you can now share it, so somebody else who's actually completed the game or played the game should share whatever texture cache they've built up with somebody else, so on and so forth. So then when that person, even if they've never played it before, can now experience it pretty much stutter-free, lag-free, whatever you want to call it, making the experience a hell of a lot. It does mean when you actually load the game, especially if it's a big one with some texture caches, you have got that little loading screen, but that's a matter of seconds, not minutes or something. It's hardly noticeable, and to be honest, I would rather have that than the knock-on effect of these stutters whilst playing the games. So that is a huge improvement on that drop. Some of the things that they haven't been able to introduce then is, first off, GPU buffer cache. Now what they're saying in their bug report is basically, when you're playing it, even no matter what kind of settings you put in, some games will be affected to some flickers in terms of the graphics. Now, I'm not sure what they're getting at with this one. Like, see, I've seen some different types of flickers through different types of games, and maybe it just affects different games in different types of way. But with this one, on this build, I have noticed a slight flicker, I don't know if you can see it in some of the footage, of just a split second of little coloured boxes whilst I'm playing the game. Now, when I'm playing Zelda games, I'm seeing actual characters and pixels flicker, so it depends on what games we're looking at. Now, just to emphasize this point and to show you in more detail what I'm experiencing with this game on Super Mario 3D World, when I disable the compressed textures in the options menu, this is what I'm seeing, basically, the big coloured squares. Now, I'm not sure if it's the same thing. It looks like the same thing, but these are a more exaggerated version of what I'm seeing for that split second. Hardly noticeable. You have to look for it to see it, but this is what I'm experiencing in game, and I'm not sure if this is what they're getting on about in the bug report. Maybe that could change for different people's systems. Maybe certain setups could be better than others. Maybe it's just a generic bug overall systems. I'd like to hear your input on what you're getting when you start to play these games. Is this affecting everybody in these kind of ways? Of course, me turning these texture compressions off and on, then yes, it is going to affect that. But as stock, the way it should be played, is it affecting you guys? So something else is VRAM. Now this isn't a bug, this is a feature that they wanted to add into it, but they couldn't. Now don't get me wrong, VRAM is already in there. We've already utilising the actual GPU and its VRAM. Now that in itself is a blessing. That in itself is an absolute gift for us. Now in terms of other emulators, they are only dreaming of utilising the GPU, especially the more current gen ones. And for them to utilise it in a way that this Cemu is utilising it in its current builds, they could only, again, dream of this kind of feature. Now, what they wanted to do, the Cemu team, was actually streamline this to give less VRAM usage. Now, this, of course, like I said, it's an absolute gift and a blessing. And for them to even contemplate streamlining this and configuring it even better, absolutely awesome. So, unfortunately, that feature isn't enabled as of yet. So, in other words, more VRAM the better. If you've got a good graphics card, apparently it works better. But because I haven't really got any low-end ones, I can't really comment on that one. So again, hopefully you guys can fill me in on more of this stuff. But yeah, absolutely awesome that it's in there. And if you get to do it in future builds, then hats off for that one. Some other bugs that were talked about then are the recompiler can cause glitches and freezes. Now again, I've got no idea what version of this is going on with, because each game has different bugs in virtually all kinds of different ways. It can be very confusing as to what issue is caused from what bug, so on and so forth. So this could be the Zelda thing, it could be those little squares going on. I don't know, maybe you guys could give me some input as to what's going on. It'd be great to hear some feedback to try and clear up some of these bugs and what people are interpreting them as. Of course, the developers are probably the ones who would give the key of knowledge to all this. And of course, the last one is Amiibo Support. Amiibo Support has been enabled for some time, but again, it is very limited. It's kind of a extra gift. It's a bonus when I class Amiibo Support even involved in all this. Amiibos themselves, I'm not an avid collector, but I do appreciate the functionality that they bring to the system, and then of course onto the emulator itself. So having any kind of functionality and support with that kind of stuff would be a great addition. It'd be nice to get stuff like that in the future, but for me it's all about the compatibility. So if they can bring more games to the table, especially Hyrule Warriors and stuff like that, then well, that's just awesome news all round. Okay then, so that is basically the emulator. I probably covered more of the emulator than how it's actually involved with this game and how it's doing its compatibility. But to be honest, Mario 3D World has been absolutely flawless for some time now. Of course, added feature of bringing new things into it, and the added addition of this 4K resolution has just been the tip of the iceberg, which has teetered it over the edge into becoming the actual console beta that this emulator now is. Of course, limited to certain games, although that catalogue itself is getting even bigger. But awesome news all round. The addition of the extra features in this version of the emulator has helped this game no end, and others, which we will be going through with later videos in this series. So thank you very much, Cemu team. You've done an awesome job as always. I look forward to any new updates that you bring to us, especially if they are as bountiful as the ones you graced us with this time. Hats off to everybody in the scene. Thank you very much to everybody involved in this. Please leave your comments down below. Give some feedback about how you are interpreting not just the information but the actual emulator itself, especially once this goes public. So thank you very much for joining me today, guys. Please like, please subscribe, please do all the things that people normally do when they're emulating a console better than a console could play. But most of all, you have a good day. Laters!